其實呢條題目呢，我都好中意嘅，因為佢牽涉咗一啲嶄新一啲嘅情景，你未見過㗎。2021年第7條題目係有關於花、昆蟲嘅科學探究。Part A 就問啦，有花植物通常受到環境壓力，即係惡劣情況底下啦，就會誘發而開花嘅。咁題目就要我哋解釋下呢一個開花嘅反應啦，係點樣去增加得到有花植物嘅存活機會嘅。咁我哋入題目之前就講一講咩叫環境壓力啦，咩叫惡劣情況啦，太熱啦、太凍啦、唔夠水啦，或者俾昆蟲去襲擊、去進食啦，其實對棵植物嘅生存都係有負面嘅影響噶嘛。咁所以咧，呢一個咧，我哋泛指嘅就係叫做環境壓力啦。其實成條題目係考緊我哋啲乜嘢呢？就係考翻啦開花嘅後果啦。開咗花之後，究竟會發生咩事呢？就會有機會散播到花粉啦，從而有個受精作用啦，就會產生到果實。而果實入面就會有種子啦，咁所以題目咧都係考翻我哋有關於形成同埋散播果實或者係種子嘅。而題目咧雖然隱藏咗呢一個字啊，但係其實都係問緊同一樣嘢嘅啫。開花呢個反應對於有花植物嘅生存有咩嘅重要性咯？又嚟咯，有咩好處呢？咁所以啦，呢條題目咧最重要就係考翻我哋有關於散播果實同埋種子嘅重要性啦。咁其實書本咧都有講過噶啦，就係咧佢係離開到親代嘅植物啦，離開到個阿媽啦，叫做就可以去到一個遠一啲嘅地方，就避免到過分嘅擠迫啦、太激烈嘅競爭啦，可以住到一個遠啲嘅地方、新嘅地方去重新出發啦。去到第三個原因咧，亦都係互相呼應嘅。就係嗰啲植物嘅後代啦、個子代啦，能夠逃離得到同個親代植物有關係嘅害蟲啦，或者疾病嘅。與此同時啦，題目都考翻我哋有關於種子嘅特性。咁其實種子有咩咁特別呢？咁書本我哋都有講過嘅。當一粒種子啦，當佢被散播去到一個地方，而呢個地方呢係一個有利嘅條件嚟嘅。咩叫有利條件啊？溫度適中啦，水分充足啦，諸如此類。呢個種子呢就會發芽成為一個幼苗啦，到頭來啦就成為一棵植物啦。咁而家呢條題目咧就考翻我哋開花嘅結果啦，然後解釋翻點樣增加到存活嘅機會嘅。咁以下咧有3個導向，所以呢條題目咧一開始我哋就講翻開花嘅結果啦，佢就會導致到有果實同埋種子嘅形成啦。咁當中啦，果實同埋種子咧其實都係一個散播嘅單位嚟嘅，就令到我哋嘅子代或者個後代咧就藉此咧從親代嘅植物向外散播，離開咗個母體。咁所以啦，個子代同後代咧就能夠避免到一個惡劣嘅情況啦，而有較高嘅存活率嘅。例如啦，本身住嗰個地方咧係較為少水分嘅，咁話唔定啦，你俾啲風吹走個種子，或者俾啲動物啊去帶走咗你個果實，跟住去到老遠屙咗屎嘅話咧，咁屎入面都有水分㗎，咁其實都話唔定咧係增加到佢哋存活嘅機會嘅。咁當然啦，你話係咪一定會先？其實就真係唔一定，因為冇話包生仔噶嘛。你由一個乾嘅地方去到一個再乾啲嘅地方，得唔得啦？可以。咁問題就係話啦，你能夠走到嘅，你就有轉機；你 keep 住留喺呢度嘅，就一定係繼續乾嘅。去到第二個原因啦，就係種子咧能夠喺一個惡劣嘅情況底下去存活啦，或者保持喺一個不活躍嘅狀態啦 ，remain inactive。咁並且啦喺一個有利嘅情況底下咧，重新發芽嘅。咁所以啦，1、2、3，咁所以啦，佢就唔以1、2、3，所以啦個種子咧就唔以一整棵嘅植物嘅情況出現啦，就以種子或者果實嘅情況出現咯。去到第3啦，果實或者種子係一個散播嘅單位啦。咁啊，子代或者後代咧就藉此從親代嘅植物向外散播。咁即使啦，你唔能夠散播到一個好遠嘅地方，可能都係原地墜落啫。但係起碼粒種子仍然係一個不活躍嘅狀態，佢唔會成長緊，跟住就話哎呀死啦，外面環境好差，跟住好快死咗。咁所以你明白個概念呢，就係一棵植物以種子嘅形式，無論佢係存活住定還是以一個不活躍嘅情況底下，當佢去到一個有利嘅環境呢，佢可以重新成長翻，成為一棵新嘅植物，咁就逃離咗呢個環境壓力嘅影響啦。咁其實呢條題目呢都幾有意思嘅喎，大家有冇睇過《水星的魔女》啊？一啲植物都一樣㗎，佢選擇開花結果 能夠讓種子能夠讓果實同埋種子散播開去。你話啦，係咪必然係一個好嘅結果呢？可能唔係嘅，佢係一個乾嘅地方，去到一個更加乾嘅地方，鬼知咩？因為粒種子可能俾風吹走嘅啫嘛，係咪？而生命其實就係在乎於嗰個希望，你係可以去到一個好一啲嘅地方。去到 Part B 咧，就有關於科學探究啦。最近咧，科學家就觀察到蜜蜂喺個葉上面咬一啲細嘅窿窿，但係咧就冇話食咗佢或者運走啲葉嘅碎片嘅，淨係咬個窿啫。咁科學家咧就提出一個假説啦，就係蜜蜂對有花植物施加一個機械性嘅壓力，而誘發一棵有花植物開花。為咗測試呢個假説咧，就將處於相同發育階段嘅冇花蕾嘅3種番茄嘅植物咧，就做以下嘅處理啦。第一組咧就係蜜蜂喺個葉上面咬個細嘅窿窿，就係蜜蜂嘅傷害啦。第二咧就係用個鉗咧喺個葉上面吉一個大細相約嘅細嘅窿窿，就係一個機械式嘅損害啦。而去到第三部分咧就係對照裝置啦，就係冇任何處理嘅完整嘅葉啦。後咧我哋就再記錄翻每一組嘅番茄植物株啦，究竟經過幾耐呢？然後咧我哋就記錄翻每一組嘅番茄啦，究竟佢要相隔幾耐先去到開花嘅。咁而家第一部分咧就問咯，如果上述嘅假説係正確嘅話，咁究竟我哋會有咩嘅結果呢？呢條題目咧就考翻我哋全視技能啦，就係預測可能嘅結果。咁我哋睇翻個假説咯，就係蜜蜂對有花植物施加機械性嘅壓力，就會誘發佢開花嘅。咁我哋咧睇翻3個裝置咯。第一個裝置咧就係蜜蜂損害，第二個裝置就係機械性損害，第三個咧就冇損害嘅。咁即係第3個選項咧，應該需要長啲時間先開到花啦。咁呢個題目啦，我哋點樣去理解呢？其實啦，呢個假説咧係有個因果關係喺背後嘅。個因咧就係機械性嘅壓力，而個果咧就係引發一個開花嘅反應啦。然後我哋睇翻3個裝置啦。第一個裝置就係蜜蜂損害，第二個裝置就係機械性損害，第3個裝置就係對照，所以佢冇損害。其實頭2個都應該係被歸納成為機械性嘅壓力嘅，因為蜜蜂咬佢都係機械性壓力嚟㗎嘛。所以睇翻頭2個裝置呢，我哋就可以預測可能結果咯。就係啦，蜜蜂損害啦，同埋機械性損害呢2個裝置呢，就係蜜蜂損害啦，同埋機械性損害啦，兩者都會將開花嘅時間縮短至相約嘅程度嘅。因為我哋當中都有一個假設，就係棵植物係唔會知道呢個窿呢就係蜜蜂咬嘅。嗰個窿咧就攞個鉗去吉嘅。之後啦，去到第2部分咧，題目就俾咗個表我哋啦，就顯示翻各組嘅番茄啦，經過處理之後，直至其開花所需要嘅時間啦。俾蜜蜂咬嘅38日，用個鉗去吉個窿嘅咧就56日，冇任何處理過冇窿嘅咧就係70日啦。咁呢個題目咧就叫我哋參考翻喺個表格入面嘅數據啦，去討論下呢啲數據係咪支持蜜蜂對有花植物施加機械性嘅壓力，就誘發到佢開花呢個假説呢？題目啦，當然考緊我哋嘅就係數據分析啦。條題目嘅作答應假呢，我哋就要做翻個比較啦。我哋先嚟比較下 set up one 蜜蜂咬嘅同埋冇損害究竟有咩分別啦。嗱，就用個鉗啦喺塊葉上面吉個窿，就同個對照實驗又去比較一下啦。然後啦就得出結論啦。究竟我哋所獲得嘅數據支唔支持我哋呢個假説呢？當初嘅假説就係話蜜蜂對有花植物施加機械性壓力，就會誘發到佢開花嘛。咁即係有個壓力就得㗎啦，係咪？當初去預測嘅就係無論係蜜蜂咬啦，定係吉個窿啦，其實佢哋嘅開花時間咧應該係相約嘅。但係我哋見得到，其實個結果並不是這樣喎。咁我哋要點樣去寫翻我哋嘅答案呢？第一部分啦，就係睇翻呢 set up one 對 control，set up two 對 control 佢哋之間咧嘅一個比較。咁我哋就會發現啦，其實咧無論俾蜜蜂咬啦，定係攞個鉗去吉佢啦，佢開花嘅時間咧對比起個對照實驗咧，的確係短咗嘅。咁即係證明到啦，機械性壓力咧的確係會加快到棵植物開花嘅。但係我哋會發現啦，其實一個係38日，一個係56日，佢哋嘅時間真係爭少少嘅喎。所以咧，我哋要寫埋第2個嘅結論啦。原來咧，大家都係機械性嘅壓力。我攞個鉗咧去吉佢嘅話咧，其實用嘅時間係長啲嘅喎。或者相反啦，你話啦，俾蜜蜂咬嘅話咧，用短啲時間就開到花咯喎。咁樣就表明咗咧，除咗機械性嘅損害之外咧， 應該仲有其他嘅因素去誘發到植物開花嘅。或整個結果算唔算完全支持我哋嘅假說呢？單純以機械性嘅壓力嚟睇呢，就的確係支持嘅。咁啊，因為啦，無論係吉窿定係俾蜜蜂咬啦，的確係短啲時間噶嘛。但係比較埋個日數之後呢，我哋就會知道啦，原來蜜蜂咬呢唔係淨係咬個窿窿咁簡單，可能係有其他因素呢係導致到棵植物係加快咗開花嘅。去到 Part C 啦，當蜜蜂去建立一個新嘅巢穴嘅時候呢，佢所在嘅區域如果冇足夠花粉嘅供應呢，佢哋就會對周圍有花植物嘅葉呢去造成較多嘅破損。咁呢個行為啦，會對啲蜜蜂又有啲咩嘅好處呢？即係又問你重要性咯。今次呢，其實都係考緊我哋嘅傳視技能啦。今次就考我哋有關於提出建議啦，就係去應用我哋嘅生物科知識，從而對於一個我哋唔熟悉嘅情況去推敲出一個答案、一個解釋咯。首先我哋就要知道啲蜜蜂當佢建立一個新嘅巢嘅時候，究竟有啲咩嘅需要啦。首先我哋就要知得到啦，當啲蜜蜂喺一個唔夠花粉嘅情況底下，要建立一個新嘅巢穴，其實佢最需要嘅係啲乜嘢呢？第一個原因呢，就係當啲蜜蜂去咬啲葉嘅話呢，係能夠確保到開花同埋建立新巢嘅時間呢，係相互配合到嘅。第二啦，就係有關於個需要啦，啲蜜蜂需要啲花去開花，究竟對佢嘅生存啲咩嘅重要性呢？就係確保佢哋有足夠嘅食物供應，去俾佢哋起一個新嘅巢同埋繁殖啦。好，跟住咧就去到一點出發咯。今次嘅題目咧就係由植物生存咧去做起點嘅，跟住考我哋兩樣嘢啦。第一啦就係開花反應啦，第二啦就係整個嘅科學探究啦。咁啊先講咗開花反應先啦。開咗花就有機會傳花粉。咁傳花粉有兩款方法，一個係自花傳粉，一個係異花傳粉。有咩嘅分別呢？而家啦，我哋用蜜蜂去傳花粉嘅話啦，會大啲機會係用緊自花傳粉定係異花傳粉呢？第二啦，就去到科學探究啦。今次嘅實驗呢，有實驗嘅裝置啦，同埋對照嘅裝置啦。兩者嘅最大分別呢，就係對照裝置係冇咗我哋需要探究嘅因素，即係我哋嘅 IV 嘅。今次我哋嘅 IV 呢，就係吉嗰啲窿窿啊。咁吉嗰啲窿窿啦，無論你係蜜蜂咬佢嘅，定係攞個鉗去吉佢嘅，都係窿窿嚟噶嘛。但係第三個對照實驗呢，就係冇窿窿嘅。對於整個科學探究，我哋有一定嘅假說啦，咁我哋就要就住呢個假說去預測個結果先。咁做完實驗得出個結果之後呢，我哋就睇下同我哋當初嘅預測吻唔吻合咯。如果唔吻合嘅，咁究竟係咪我哋嘅假說set 錯咗，而係咪我哋嘅假說立錯咗呢？又或者嗰個實驗做錯咗呢？從而得出結論啦。咁今次嘅題目咧都有問埋蜜蜂巢穴嘅，同開花咧都有關係喎，因為今次講到明啦，係蜜蜂同埋花啊嘛，咁一定係講緊蟲媒花啦。咁點解啲花可以吸引到啲蜜蜂呢？自不然就係因為佢開花之後就有花蜜去提供一啲嘢食，去作為一個獎賞，去俾啲蜜蜂咧去幫佢手傳花粉啦。咁下次咧題目就可以問埋你咯，蜜蜂啦同埋有花植物啦，究竟佢哋有啲咩嘅生態關係呢？呢個題目咧我都好中意嘅，因為佢牽涉咗一啲嶄新一啲嘅情景，你未見過㗎。咁啊涉及咗蜜蜂啦，透過喺個植物嘅葉上面咬啲細嘅窿窿，去誘導翻開花嘅呢個現象。第一部分啦，就要我哋解釋翻開花有助植物喺不利環境底下生存，究竟原因何在啦？第二啦，就係關於科學探究，要理解一個實驗嘅設計啦，測試一個假說啦，同埋按照得到嘅數據咧，去得出結論嘅呢個能力嘅。咁你覺得蜜蜂同埋有花植物究竟有啲咩嘅生態關係呢？喺留言區留低你嘅答案，睇下你啱唔啱啊！咁同一時間啦，亦都可以睇下咧過往有關於傳粉嘅題目，溫一溫書嘅。2-1 Question 7 is about flowering plants, insects, and scientific investigation. In flowering plants, environmental stress under the adverse conditions in general can induce flowering. So the question asks us to explain why this flowering response can increase the chance of survival of the flowering plants. So what is the environmental stress? For example, the temperature is too high, the temperature is too low, there is no water supply, or the insects they are feeding on the plants. Because all those factors, it will affect the survival of the flowering plants. So for this question, is checking us the concept that we need to realize the consequence of flowering. There will be the formation and the dispersal of the fruits and the seed, and then we need to recall the importance of flowering response for survival of the plants. Although the question, it doesn't really mention the terms importance. I want to tell you that we are going to talk about the significance, importance, or the benefit of the flowering response for the survival of the flowering plants. And then the critical concept is that we need to recall the importance of dispersal of fruits and seed. So in the book, we can recall it. What is the significance of seed and fruit dispersal? Reduce overcrowding and competition for resources. It allows the species to colonize new area, and the daughter plants can escape from the pest and the disease associated with the parent plants. So that's the main idea we need to recall. And meanwhile, we need to recall the characteristic of the seed. So in the book, we learned that when a seed is dispersed to a place with favorable conditions, for example, the suitable temperature and the sufficient amount of water supply, so it may give rise to a stealing and eventually an adult plant. So how does this flowering response help the plants to deal with the environmental stress? So first of all, you need to mention that flowering results in the formation of fruits and seed. First of all, fruit and seed, they are dispersal unit, allow the offspring to be dispersed away from the mother plants. And the offspring, they can escape from the adverse condition and have a higher survival rate. For example, the parent plant, they are already living in a very dry environment, and then they will produce the flower, then they will produce the flower and produce the fruit and seed, and then somehow the seed, they may be carried by the wind or some animals to far away from the parent plants. They may be able to get more water. And the second point is about the characteristic of the seed. The seed can survive or remain inactive throughout the period with adverse condition, and germinate when the condition becomes favorable again. And third one, the fruit and seed, they are dispersal unit, which allow the offspring to be dispersed away from the mother plant, and the seed, they can survive or remain inactive throughout the period of adverse conditions. The idea is that if the seed or the fruit, they cannot be dispersed or carried out far away from the plant. They just drop and very close to their parents' plants. So somehow they can still remain inactive throughout this period, waiting for the favorable conditions again. So you may ask that, oh, Mr. Leung, can we guarantee that the seed they can 100% go to somewhere with favorable condition? Not really, but there is a chance, there is a hope in the life. So you can see the amazing part of the life. Everyone is really struggling for survival. B. Recently, scientists observed that bees cut tiny hole in leaves, mouth part, but did not consume or transport the left fragments. There is a hypothesis that bees induce flowering by imposing a mechanical stress on the flowering plants. To test this hypothesis, 3 groups of tomato plants at the same developmental stage without the bud were subject to the following treatments respectively. For the first setup, there is bee damage. The bees cut tiny hole on the leaves. And the second setup is that similar holes in the leaves were cut by using forceps, which is a mechanical damage. And for the setup 3, which is the control setup, there is no damage. The leaves, they are intact without treatment. And the time taken for flowering of each group of these tomato plants, the respective treatment was recorded. If the above hypothesis is correct, what would be the predicted result? This question is checking us the scientific skills to predict the possible result. You can see that from the hypothesis, there are very clear cause and effects. The cause is the mechanical stress, and the effect is inducing flowering. So for the plant, we can observe the setup 1 and 2 because we can assume that the plant, they cannot distinguish the bee damage and the mechanical damage because both of them, they are the mechanical damage. Therefore, the prediction will be both bee damage and mechanical damage would shorten the flowering plants to a similar extent, maybe similar time, similar number of days. And for part B2, we can take a look at the table. The table shows the time taken for flowering of these tomato plants after the treatments. So we can say setup 1, it needs, so for setup 1, it takes 38 days. Setup 2, mechanical damage by the forceps, it takes 56 days. And for the control, no damage, it takes 70 days. With reference to the data shown in the table, discuss if the data supports the hypothesis that bee induce flowering by imposing a mechanical stress on the flowering plants. So you can see that the critical skills, we need to analyze the data, and the scaffolding is that first part we need to compare the effects of different treatments with the control, setup 1 to setup 3, and setup 2 with the setup 3. And then we need to take a look at the result and then draw conclusion. Do the data support the hypothesis? First of all, we need to recall the prediction from part B1. Both bees damage and mechanical damage, because both of them, they are regarded as the mechanical damage, both of them would shorten the flowering time to a similar extent. So let's take a look at the data. For the comparison, the general trend of the time taken to induce flowering, so you can see that 38 days versus the 38 days and the 70 days, 38 days and 70 days, 56 days and the 70 days. So you can see that the time taken to flower in the plants which, so you can see that the time taken to flower, so you can see that the time taken of flower, so you can see that the time taken to flower in the plants with mechanical damage was shorter than in plants without damage, 1 to 3 and 2 to 3. It shows that mechanical damage can really induce flowering. And the second part, we need to compare the exact time taken to induce flower. Because you can see that although setup 1 and 2, they take shorter time for the plants to flower, for the setup 1, it takes much shorter time. So we can see that the bee damage advanced the flowering plant a lot more than pure mechanical damage, 38 days and 56 days, which show that there were factors other than the mechanical damage which induced the flowering. 而係導致到棵植物咧係能夠加速開花嘅。So somehow it can just support part of the hypothesis. For the mechanical damage, we can really see that with the mechanical damage, it can really shorten the time of flowering. However, if we really compare the days in setup 1 and setup 2, we know that there must be some factors other than the mechanical damage which induce the flowering. And then for part 2, when the bees establish a new colony, we inflict more leaves damage to the surrounding flowering plants if the colony is in an area with insufficient supply of pollen. So what's the advantage of this behavior to the bees? So this question is checking us the suggestion skills. We need to apply the biological knowledge to put forward an answer in an unfamiliar situation. So we need to realize what do the bees need when they are establishing a new colony when the area is insufficient supply of pollen. It can ensure there is a match between the timing of flower production and the colony establishment. And the second one, we need to recall that how is this need important for the bees to survive in a new colony. So for the bees, what do they feed on? They feed on the leaves? Not really, they feed on the nectar. So it can ensure there is sufficient food supply for the colony. So let's take a look at the curriculum mapping. This question talk about the plant survival, and then we talk about the flowering response and the scientific investigation, and relate the concept to the pollination. The question can ask you the similarity and the difference between the self-pollination and the cross-pollination. And the question asks you about the scientific investigation. You need to distinguish the experimental setup from the control setup. The only difference is that the control setup, it doesn't have the IV, the independent variable, which is under investigation. And for the question, it tells us the hypothesis and asks us to predict the result. And then the data, they are given for us to compare with the prediction and draw conclusion. And later on, it asks us about the bee colony, so it can be related to the concept about the insect pollinated flower and the nectar in the flower. So any possible question variation, it can ask us to state and explain the ecological relationship between the bees and the flowering plants. You can leave your answer in the comment section, and let's see, is your concept clear enough? You can also watch the video before about the pollination of the flowering plants.